Hello, hello, and welcome to the Tip of the Iceberg podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. I'm your host, Nick Brlansky, joined as always by Nick Horwat. And guess what, Horwat? It is opening day PPG. I know people used to say opening day PNC, but it is opening day PPG Paints Arena as the Pittsburgh Penguins take on the Arizona Coyotes later tonight in Pittsburgh. We're going to talk about that matchup very heavily. We're also going to break down Saturday's matchup briefly, but where I wanted to start, because that's how you ended last episode, and I'm interested. You piqued my interest
Mhm.
for what you said that, acting as a stockbroker, buy stock in Josh Archibald, the Penguins' 12th, maybe 13th forward. Why do you believe that stock should be bought in Josh Archibald?
Yes, buying stock in Josh Archibald. Coming from me, who has never bought stock in his life and stopped sports betting after maybe 5 bets. So I'm not a gambler and I'm not a stockbroker in any stretch of the means. So don't take my word for word here. But when you talked with Brian Metzer on Penguins Lunch, I was listening closely this time. I usually don't. No, I'm kidding. Yes, I do.
Wow.
But
Okay.
that one specifically, I was actually paying attention to. Um, and you brought up Josh Archibald, and he had mentioned something that not too many people realized or thought about when the re-signing happened. He lays the body. He's only 5'10", but he lays the body like nobody's business. When Brian Metzer mentioned any team he's on, he's normally around the leaders in hit totals. And if you just look at the numbers, that's really true. In 52 games in his last full-ish season of the 2020-2021 season with Edmonton, those 52 games, he had 192 hits, laying the body. The season before, he played 62 games, had 165. He's going to lay the body. Brian Metzer said that the banging and the crashing of someone like Josh Archibald is something that the Penguins were missing last year. Someone to clear space, clear ice, and open up opportunities. Sure, he's going to play on the fourth line, but sometimes those players are difficult to play against, and those hit totals continue to be just about the average. He has 660 career hits and only 243 career games. It's an average of just under 2, I believe, per game. I forget what it is exactly, or something stupid like that. It's pretty high, though. And in the final preseason game, he had 5 in the first period alone with the Penguins. So like, his style of play is still working in the Mike Sullivan system. And that trend should continue, assuming that he's playing tonight in the home opener once that lineup comes out and we see what kind of stuff he can bring. He's not here, and it's not going to be known for his goal scoring. It's not going to be here to pick up assists, but it is everything away from the puck that he's going to drive his own sort of play for. I think we talked about it a long time ago. I forget what exactly the topic was, but he's not making a league minimum contract. They
No.
gave him a little extra money, and with what Hextall said when the signing was made, a little extra confidence. So he's not here on league minimum. He's here on the good graces and the good word of Ron Hextall. So he fits their mold very well. And by there, I mean Hextall and Brian Burke. I think you may not like it, and you may not have to agree, but Josh Archibald's going to be in this lineup a lot more often than we were expecting when we first signed him.
You mentioned Hextall and Burke. Honestly, the way that he's played throughout the preseason and from everything that Metzer has said and you've kind of seen and you've mentioned early on sounds like Mike Sullivan guy to me. Quick, physical, loves the forecheck, doesn't slow down, pain in the ass. It sounds like somebody Mike Sullivan would like to employ. And you mentioned the physical side of the game. Whenever I think about the rest of the Penguins forward lineup, the only other guy that I could think of that's overtly physical is Jason Zucker. There's nobody else that throws the body around all too much in the Penguins lineup.
And the Zucker one's just a different sort of conversation because, yeah, he throws the body around, but that's not his main purpose. And when he does it, at times it can come at his own expense with how, not brittle, but he's injury prone. You don't want him doing that all the time. Sure, every now and again, because that's just the game he plays. He plays a hard-nosed game, and that's going to happen. But let's say if you lose Jason Zucker because he tried to lay a big hit and he's the one that got hurt, you feel something different than Josh Archibald doing it because, again, He's not scoring you the goals. He's not the highlight reel player, but he's going to throw the body. He's tough as nails, and he might be just turning 30, so he's not the young kid, but you know exactly what he's going to be, and that is the one that throws the body around and is the pest. I don't remember who tweeted or even what game it was, but someone was getting into a scrum with Josh Archibald, and he was just smiling in his face.
I think it might have been the last one against the Sabres.
Like Kenny Pickett, just smiling in his face, laughing. That's exactly the type of tenacity that every Pittsburgh team needs. If you want to talk about Kenny Pickett doing it, that's awesome stuff. Sure, the Steelers aren't great.
No.
But it's fun having someone who cares that much and is that confident in themselves, despite how, in Kenny Pickett's case, despite how little experience he may have, or in Josh Archibald's case, how little he may be. That's called confidence. I mean, what is one thing Brad Marchand does very well? He's a pest.
Yeah.
And you know he's not big. I cannot remember his height off the top, but he's not a big dude.
Yeah.
So just having that sort of tenacity and oomph to the game, it helps a lot. And Brad Marchand is only 5'9". He's shorter than Josh Archibald.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Okay. So he's also got an inch on the rat. So
yeah, it's not about the size of the dog in the fight. It's about the size of the fight in the dog. And we'll see that from Josh Archibald this year. Like you mentioned, $900,000 contract, one-way contract. I believe it's also waivers exempt, or not waivers exempt. He would have to go through waivers. So expect to see a lot of Josh Archibald, especially early on in the season. But let's move over to talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins taking on the Arizona Coyotes. We're going to take it from either side of the puck. We're going to start with the Pittsburgh Penguins side, though. What are you watching for on the Penguins side in Game 1?
In Game 1, what I'm watching for, aside from Josh Archibald, I mean, just to be honest with you, is how good this core and how hungry this core is continuing to be. It's a little harder to really have the discussion of, because obviously they're hungry and obviously they're great players, but you want to see if there's anything different about them this year, considering 2 new contracts were signed. We're all kind of aware this is it in a way. Sure, not just this season, but next season. But we're all aware that the fight for that one last Stanley Cup, or you never know, that those 2 final Stanley Cups begins tonight. And you have to see, it has to start from day one. You want to see if those 3, Crosby, Malkin, and Letang specifically, still have that drive and can still carry play like no one's business. And of course, you're going to watch for everyone else around them. Like, can Jake Gensel start his 50-goal campaign off on the right foot? Can, Brock McGinn is a fun one. Can he become something new and improved upon from what last season is? And of course, we have all 6 defensemen that we weren't sure what it was going to look like until literally yesterday.
Yeah, no, the defense is definitely, give or take. You got 9 guys that 6 of them can only play in the lineup at a time, or you could do 7 and 11 forwards. But I particularly don't subscribe to that being a smart way of deploying your hockey team. But we aren't going to see it on opening night. It'll be 6 defensemen. It seems like P.O. Joseph will slot in on that third pairing. So, yeah, I like that. I think that watching the core, especially when there was a chance that they weren't all going to come back, how important it's going to be to them and how special it's going to be back on that ice, especially, in warm-ups, in those introductions coming out. It's going to be a special night at PPG Paints Arena. While it's not the beginning of the end, it's not the beginning of the last dance, it is a moment that they weren't sure was going to happen a couple months ago. So it'll be fun to watch their emotions and the emotions of everybody in the crowd tonight.
Yeah, for those guys specifically, you have to figure, I know trying to remember how the introductions go. I think if it's alphabetical order or number order, you got to go.
It's usually number order, but I'm not sure if they do the captains all last, which is what they should do.
That's I think they do that, and if not, they at least should. I know they have before, so why not again? Just because that makes it all the more special, because those 3 guys are the main pieces here. And you can see standing ovation happening. They get to the point and just immediately people start rising. It's going to happen. That's going to be the vibe in the building that night, and it's going to be the vibe all season. Watching those 3 try and tackle, like I said, 1, maybe 2, if we're lucky, final kick at the hardest trophy to win in sports.
Yeah, and Sidney Crosby spoke about that with the media. I believe it was on Tuesday afternoon, talking about what it's like going into a new season, what his excitement level is like, and really what his main goal is, which that answer will not surprise you. And we have the audio here courtesy of PittsburghPenguins.com. So take a listen to what the captain had to say about the new season.
It's a fresh start. You think about the things you try to learn last year and last year's experience. We got a lot of guys that were part of that. But yeah, it's an opportunity to, to chase the Stanley Cup. I mean, that's why you play every year. So I think I'm looking forward to it that way. It's just an opportunity again to compete and hopefully play for the Stanley Cup.
Reaffirming the desire for that fourth Stanley Cup in his career, the sixth one in Pittsburgh Penguins history. That is Captain Sidney Crosby, courtesy of PittsburghPenguins.com. Obviously, that's the goal. We don't really need to get into that all that much, but let's look at what else to watch for. We'll get back to Crosby to end out this segment, but the only injury heading into game one seems to be Teddy Blueger. He is still not practiced in a full contact capacity with the team as of yet. He is day-to-day. It seems like his status is in doubt for at least game one. It looks like Ryan Poehling will fill his role as the fourth-line center. And then the question becomes, who's going to be that 12th forward once Blueger returns? Does Poehling stay in the lineup and just bump to a wing? Or does Josh Archibald, who we already mentioned, get that nod? If you would just give out like a quick answer, who do you think would end up being the 12th guy and who's 13?
I would assume, despite how... No. I'm going to think Josh Archibald gets that bump, gets the love of being 12, and Poehling just because he's younger and has a little more room to grow in a different sense that Sullivan's going to want to see what he has in Archibald before he does Poehling. I think it's a weird system that Sullivan likes to deploy. We know this. He likes being a little tougher when he can, a little grittier in certain ways, not overly aggressive like Ryan Reeves maybe, but in certain ways, and Josh Archibald can bring that. Whereas Poehling, we know he's rebuilding, but he's still kind of unproven, and that might hold him back a little bit. They might switch on and off quite a couple of games here, but
yeah,
I expect Josh Archibald to get the nod first, I would think.
Yeah, and one thing when you're talking about all of these guys is they're going to be part of the Pittsburgh Penguins penalty kill unit, which is basically a revamped unit heading into this year. Of course, last season they finished third in the National Hockey League on the man disadvantage, but this year, plenty of new faces on that penalty kill. Poehling, as we mentioned, Josh Archibald will get some time. Kasperi Kapanen will be moved to the penalty kill to get some more ice time in that capacity. And Jan Rutta. Rutta is somebody, and I wrote an article on it on InsideThePenguins.com a couple of weeks, or last week, I should say. He's a guy that he played the penalty kill when he was with the Tampa Bay Lightning, but last year he was fifth on the team among defensemen in penalty kill ice time, despite being second on the team in games played among defensemen. So he was a guy that was the fifth rotation piece, or if somebody was injured, he would step in. So now he's going to take on a larger role. He's going to be on a fixed penalty kill unit. We'll see what he's able to do with that added pressure of continuously playing on the man disadvantage. Moving on quickly, obviously, one big storyline to watch, especially as it kicks off tonight at PPG Paints Arena. There's a couple of prove-it Penguins. Excuse me. There's a couple of prove-it Penguins in Jason Zucker and Kasperi Kapanen. What do they do to get their season started on the right foot? Of course, Zucker playing with Evgeny Malkin, Kasperi Kapanen playing on that third-line role, playing on the penalty kill. What do we see from these guys, and how do they start this campaign where one of them's on a contract season and another one just got affirmation from the front office that there is faith behind him? What does he do with that information, and how does he take advantage of it?
Well, in Jason Zucker's case, he just has to remain healthy. He doesn't have to do much right away. He's going to want to get off the blocks pretty nicely, right? He's going to want to do something to really show himself right away. I think his roster spot is at least pretty certain until we're not going to have the conversation of a healthy scratch for Jason Zucker until for a long time. Whereas Kapanen, that conversation is going to come a lot quicker. If this is even making sense, it's not a matter of Kelly Kapanen needs to get off the blocks properly right away. He needs to look effective in game one into game 2 and right into game 3. Whereas Jason Zucker, we understand that despite him being in a contract year and wanting to get off on the right foot, if it doesn't happen in game 1, it's not the end of the world. We have other people who should be taking the mantle first before Zucker can do that. I'm pretty much giving Zucker a little bit of slack here.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like, and I also
Yeah.
think the Penguins are going to give that to Kapanen. I know that the leash is a little bit shorter because of how bad his season was last
Yeah.
year, and for Zucker, it was mainly due to injury for his downfall last season. Kapanen was healthy the entire year. I
Mhm.
believe he played in 79 games last year, only missed 3. So he doesn't have the excuse of, hey, you're coming back from injury, you're battling on and off. So he really needs to take the bull by the horns here with that reaffirmed confidence and with that reaffirmed just backing by the Pittsburgh Penguins and take advantage of it from the get-go. I mean, him, Carter, Heinen, that could be a lethal third line for the Pittsburgh Penguins, something we will get into in episodes down the line, but they all need to play to their potential. We saw that at times from Heinen last year. We saw that early in the season last year from Carter, and we saw that in the first season back in Pittsburgh from Kapanen, but we didn't necessarily see it in 2020-21. So what we need, sorry, 21-22. My years are getting mixed up. But no, I think it's going to be very important for both of those guys to get off to a hot start. And that's not lighting the lamp on night 1. It's not that serious, bro. It's it's more like look good, play good, feel good. That's what they need to do on tonight against the Arizona Coyotes. But to end off this segment, I want to talk a little bit about the captain, Sidney Crosby. We already heard from him talking about what the goal is, and it's pretty obvious. It's a Stanley Cup. It's Stanley Cup or bust for Sidney Crosby for the next 3 years. And then, of course, he said he's going to reevaluate once his contract is up and see where he's at that point in time. But entering year 18, I loved a graphic that Penn's PR put out earlier this week, and I'll throw it up here for our YouTube viewers. The longest tenured captains in NHL history. With tonight's game, Sidney Crosby will enter and become a captain for the 16th straight season for the Pittsburgh Penguins, which is now tied for second all-time with Joe Sakic of the Colorado Avalanche, and the only person to be a captain for longer than Sidney Crosby now is Steve Yzerman, his childhood idol, with 19 seasons. If Crosby plays out his contract and that's it for him, he will finish with 18, one behind Yzerman. Who knows if this is even on his radar, but he could chase that down and add another notch into his belt for the longest tenured captain position.
Just weird stats, isn't it? He loves going after those sorts of things. We don't know exactly what his career will look like in 2 years. We don't know what the health will be. We don't know what the personal life will be. So while this is absolutely an attainable goal and something I would not be surprised to see Crosby achieve, because not only would it be the record for this statistic, but of the player he'd be surpassing.
Mm-hmm.
His, like you mentioned, his childhood idol, Steve Yzerman, the one that he grew up idolizing and wanting to be as good of a leader. At this point, he could become the better leader and be more successful. I mean, maybe not more successful, but in terms of championships, I'm trying to remember how many Stevie Y had, but he has that opportunity to really become synonymous. I mean, he already is synonymous with the name Pittsburgh Penguins, but to surpass his childhood idol is just something special that you would have to assume he's all about and willing to do.
I'm trying to look it up really quickly. How many cups does Steve Yzerman have? I feel like it's 3. It is 3. Steve Yzerman has 3. So one more Stanley Cup would pass Steve Yzerman. As I mentioned a couple weeks ago, it would tie the great Wayne Gretzky. So clearly some things that are on the mind of Sidney Crosby, but more on the mind probably of us that is watching and listening and talking than the mind of Sidney Crosby. But with year 18 means, yeah, Sidney Crosby is 35 years old. And he did have a nice little subtweet of a comment when he was talking to the media a couple days ago. We have the audio here, courtesy of Penguins.com, on what the Pittsburgh Penguins' identity might be heading into this season.
I think speed. I'll say the word experience. Another word that's been used a little bit more, but yeah, I think that's something that you need to create, though. I mean, it's one thing to say it, but that's something that through your play and through habits, that's something that you want to establish. So every team will tell you that's what they want to try to do in the first 10 games is really establish that, and that'll be the challenge.
That's Sidney Crosby talking about, yeah, everybody's saying about experience. Oh, we got experience. Basically saying, yeah, we hear you. You think we're old. But when Sidney Crosby is challenged, Sidney Crosby usually steps up to the challenge and knocks it out of the park. So, with Crosby entering his 18th season, let's see where he's at milestone wise. I'll bring the graphic up here. Obviously, he hit the 500 goal mark last season, but with 1,108 games played, he has 517 goals, 892 assists, and 1,409 points. Horwat, I think we all expect him to hit that assist mark probably in the next month. So he'll hit 900 assists, but he needs 91 points to hit 1,500 on his career. I've already stated several times on several podcasts that I expect a century mark season for Sidney Crosby. Does he hit 1,500 this year?
I believe so. Yeah, you said 106 to be specific. I think I'm fully landing on 101 as a total, just because 100 seems too clean, and I wanted to switch it up a little. So yeah, I think he can absolutely surpass 1,500 points in a for his career here, and doing it this season. And he doesn't like we're looking at. He doesn't have to hit 100 to do it.
No.
Just be over a point per game and a few extra, and he's good to go. I think that would be because his legacy needs to be a little more cemented.
Yeah, just a little bit. I think there's question as to what his legacy is at this point, right?
91 points this year will sure add another paragraph to the Hall of Fame plaque.
Yeah, I like how you just basically blew off my sarcasm where you're like, yeah, all right, shut up, Brlansky. It's early in the morning. I don't need your shit. But no, Sidney Crosby, I think we all expect him to hit that 1,500 point mark, which would be phenomenal. I mean, I wrote a story earlier in the year about how he could become a top 5 point scorer of all time and what paces he needs. Scoring 91 points is well above the pace, I believe. So if he does that, he'll be in good shape for that. What I was talking about, but I mean, Sidney Crosby entering this year, what we've seen is it seems as if he is fully ready to take on the reins and be that guy again this year. I mean, and it seems like it's year 3. As Hunter Hody said when we were on Locked On Penguins on Tuesday, he said he's treating it like it's year 3, despite it being year 18. So I think it's something that everybody should be excited about as Crosby enters the year healthy for the first time in a couple seasons.
Yeah, this is something that we should all be excited for, because no matter what way you look at it, for all 3 of these guys, we'll bring Letang and Malkin into this conversation. They are on the back end of their careers here. You could say the back 9, but sure, Letang's got some years left now. Malkin at least 4, but you still have to, no matter what happens, win or lose, cherish these guys for what they've brought to the organization over the years, and just for how blessed we all are to be watching this, to be walking on the same earth as them. It's a little different. I think Kevin Weeks put it pretty nicely whenever he said, if you've got holiday gift ideas, take your time and see a Pittsburgh Penguins game. Ask for tickets, whatever you have to do, and see these guys play out their rest of their careers together. It's something special, and regardless of win or lose, you have to appreciate just how special that these guys are for the team and for the city.
Just ask Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Of course, the end of a massive era in Steelers football earlier this year with Big Ben Roethlisberger retiring. Yeah, a new era is nice. It's a breath of fresh air. It's a change, but Pittsburgh Steelers fans right now are not loving the change, as the team right now is slated to take the first overall pick in next year's draft. Plenty of time to change that, but for the Pittsburgh Penguins, it all begins tonight against the Arizona Coyotes. We previewed it a little bit. We're going to preview it even more coming up after the break. Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. I'm Brlansky. He's Horwat. Pens start tonight. Games are here. Everything's exciting. Penguins take on the Arizona Coyotes. Puck drop slated for 7:05. For those of you heading to the game, just a couple quick reminders from us here at the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Try to be in your seats at 6:50, as that is when the pregame festivities will begin. So if you don't want to miss it, as me and Horwat discussed what that will be earlier on the episode, 6:50 is the scheduled start time. Everybody who is going to the game tonight will get a magnetic schedule and a Pittsburgh rally towel. So it's going to be a fun atmosphere, Horwat. We're both going to be in the building tonight, and we're going to watch the Penguins take on the Arizona Coyotes. Now, to preview this game, we need to first tell everybody where the Coyotes' heads are at entering this season. We already heard from Sidney Crosby. It's Stanley Cup or bust. The Coyotes, on the other hand, the team is in full-on crash for Connor mode, and not Connor McDavid. That would be Connor Bedard, the prospective first overall pick for the 2023 NHL draft. If they don't get it, to be completely honest, Matvei Michkov is slated to go second. The dude is also very, very talented. He might not be Connor Bedard good, but only time will tell. We all expected Shane Wright to be in the same position. He ended up going fourth to the Seattle Kraken. So we have Bedard and Michkov, both teams between the Arizona Coyotes and also, you mean, the Chicago Blackhawks will be in that race. The Philadelphia Flyers will be in that race. But right now, I feel like the front runner probably has to be the Arizona Coyotes. So that's where they're at entering the season. Add on to the fact that they will not have Jacob Chikrin for this game tonight, as he's rehabbing a wrist surgery that he had over the summer. And he remains on the trade block entering the season, probably for, I believe, the third straight season for the Arizona Coyotes. So that's where they're at entering the season, Horwat. What do you expect from this team later on tonight?
I don't expect much. I think if we were playing them in Arizona on that college campus, you might think, okay, these guys and the new Kachinas are going to want to set something different just because the world is down on them. Sure, they want to tank for the first overall pick if that's what their actual goal is. Yes. But at the same time, you have to understand, you're going to win some games regardless. You're not going to go 0-82.
No.
Why not bust out a big win, prove that you can be something one day, and beating a veteran team like the Pittsburgh Penguins? But again, it's on the road. It's Pittsburgh's home opener. It is the Penguins' home opener after these contracts got re-signed. We know the vibes are going to be up in the building. So, I mean, I'm not expecting a complete shellacking just because the Penguins are notorious for not playing great in home openers. But I don't expect much to come from the Arizona Coyotes. Watch out for the Coyotes in their home opener, though. Like I said, no one believes in them. Everyone's talking about this settling for the first overall pick thing. In that college arena, in that weird atmosphere, they're going to want to prove something wrong. May as well knock out one of their early wins right away.
Yeah, Arizona State's going to be – actually, I feel like that's going to be a really cool atmosphere there. I really do, and I think everybody's down on them. I think it's a really interesting wrinkle to their season because they're not going to be a good team. Like, I hate to continue bashing on a team that is clearly in a rebuild, but they're not going to be a good team when you look at the Arizona Coyotes. And last year, they weren't a good team either. I mean, the Pittsburgh Penguins did sweep the season series, took it 2-0, and neither game was particularly close. I mean, the first game on January 25th, a 6-3 win on home ice for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Sidney Crosby had a 3-point performance, 1 goal, 2 assists. That game was actually close, I will say, until the third period. I mean, it was a scoreless first. It was 2-2 after 2, and Karel Vejmelka, who we'll talk about in a minute, where a lot of people say, who? He's a guy that can steal games. We saw it last year. There were a couple of games where he doesn't necessarily have the best team in front of him, and he can still go out there and steal it. He's a National Hockey League goaltender, and he was kind of a diamond in the rough for the Arizona Coyotes last season. And with a year under his belt, I expect him to be pretty good this season. But the Penguins ended up scoring 4 third-period goals. I mean, the cream rose to the top, as I said at the time, for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And realistically, when you look at it, and then the second game was a 4-1 win in Arizona for the Penguins. Crosby, again, 2 goals. So last year, Crosby had 5 points in 2 games against this team. The cream rises to the top eventually in these games, and I don't expect anything different tonight between the Pens and the Arizona Coyotes.
No, you really shouldn't. It's just, like I said, if it was Arizona's home opener, maybe the vibes are a little different. But because they're starting on the road, and you may say that the atmosphere is going to be great. It might be great. It might be fun. It might be different, but it's just not the look of a professional hockey team. I get that NFL teams in the past have shared with college football stadiums. That's different. That is a much different animal. College football stadiums there are some college football stadiums that are bigger than NFL stadiums. Hell, actually, I've looked this up once. The top 5 or 6 biggest stadiums in the country in terms of attendance are all college football stadiums. So honestly, it's bigger for an NFL team to play in certain college football stadiums than it is for their own. So, but when a hockey team that is already, let's be real, the 4th biggest sport in the country, playing in Arizona where hockey is notoriously not popular, attacking them.
I think it's gained steam. Like I know what you're
It
talking
has.
about. Like comparatively to the Northeast and Canada markets, it's not.
Yeah.
But like it is a lot bigger than people do think. And I think when you give them a good team, Vegas has proven it. When you give a good team, people get a lot more interested. And the Coyotes haven't been good for 10 years now, since 2012 when they went to the West Finals.
Something like that. But it's obviously not the traditional hockey market. Fans will be a little quicker to jump ship, if you get what I'm saying here. And throwing them into a stadium that can't fit that many people. If they play their cards right, there is a positive way to turn this, and that is make student nights a thing. I get that it's not college hockey, but they have a great opportunity to have a pretty bright future in terms of having a fandom, right? You literally have 18 to 22-year-old demographic right there.
Yeah.
Take advantage of that, because then you can have fans for life. That's a whole different thing, though. I just don't feel the vibes of Arizona right now, and apparently things are not as good as people think. Also, the Arizona Coyotes broke Dom Dom from the Athletics. Yeah, they broke his thing, man. Whatever that was, they broke it. That's how bad they are.
Yeah. Yeah, they're in full on tank mode. But I mean, think about what it's going to look like 5 years down the road. Brand new arena in Tempe, Arizona. Connor Bedard heading into his 3rd or 4th season. Austin Matthews signs there as a free agent. The vibes are going to be immaculate in Arizona.
Filled with fans that I said are like 23 to 27-year-olds. Because they grew up, and they're all ASU grads. The tailgates are just frat parties.
Do it. Make a
exactly. They have a great opportunity.
Do that. That would be awesome. It would be really awesome.
They have a great opportunity here to build something, but I just don't see it happening yet.
Yeah.
Because you do have to put a winner on the ice.
Well, now that we've done the state of the Coyotes address, let's get back to the game coming up tonight. Obviously, we expect Karel Vejmelka to be the goaltender in net. Their backup, I just had it in front of me. I cannot remember. They just got him. Matt Irwin, I believe, is his name. Connor Irwin, I believe. He played for the Predators last year in the playoffs. He was their 3rd-string goaltender.
Connor Ingram.
Connor Ingram. Why did I get Irwin? I don't know.
Matt Irwin is a retired player, I believe.
Yeah.
Maybe a Capital at one point.
Moving on. Karel Vejmelka is going to probably be your starting goaltender tonight for the Arizona Coyotes. And like I said, he's a guy that can steal a game. He's a guy that can stand on his head. And when the Pittsburgh Penguins do have a tendency to play down to their opponents or get goalied by random goaltenders, Karel Vejmelka is in a good spot for that. So he made 30 saves on 36 shots against the Penguins last year in that first game at PPG Paints Arena. So he is no stranger to playing in the old paint bucket. So we'll see him. And then let me pull up their lineup courtesy of Daily Faceoff here in just a second, because when I look at their lineup, no, there aren't very many weapons. No, there isn't much to be afraid of, especially in the forward lineup. I won't even mention their defense because it is rough. Their defense is not great, Bob, as it were. But, looking at their forwards, a guy like Clayton Keller or a guy like Nick Schmaltz might be somebody to watch from this game, and that's probably where the goals are going to come from, to be completely honest.
When did Nick Bjugstad get there?
This season, I believe.
You look at this lineup and you say, "Oh, these are names. They're for sure names." Like Nick Bjugstad's a name, Brad Hayton's a name, Lawson Krause, Zach Cassian. They have opportunities, but nothing's going to come from it. It's just this is a lineup to pick apart. That is for sure. When your first line center is Travis Boyd, things are not going well.
Yeah, it's not a great look, but there are there are names like you mentioned.
Yeah,
I mean, we talked about Keller, we talked about Schmaltz. Each of them had 2 goals and an assist against the Penguins last year, so it's not like they haven't had success. Lawson Krause is a tough guy to play against. He's going to be tough in front of the net. I mean, we saw the Penguins add a lot during the summer, saying, "Hey, we want to be better in front of our own net." There's your first test. It's Lawson Krause, who's going to be right in Tristan Jarry's kitchen. Same with Nick Ritchie on the other side of that second line. These are guys that like to play big, like to play in front of the net, and you're going to see that tonight against the Penguins. But I think, again, the cream is going to rise to the top. I mean, Zach Cassian, Nick Bugstad, these guys aren't the cream of the crop. Jack McBain, it'll be interesting to see what he's able to do. He was a highly coveted college free agent that was, I believe, traded by the Minnesota Wild because he wasn't going to play for Minnesota. So it'll be fun to see what he's able to do if he makes his debut tonight. But it's a lot of puzzle pieces that are just thrown together in order to get Connor Bedard. And at the end of the day, that's all it is.
If you can tack on Connor Bedard onto someone how we've made it this far without even mentioning Logan Cooley, who still has to eventually make it up the system, I'm telling you, that could be a good team in the future. But again, things got to go right.
Yeah, and Cooley is going to be interesting, fun to watch, all of that jazz, but there's a reason that he's not in the lineup, and there's a reason that he's not going to be in the lineup till towards the end of the season, because it's better for his progression to not play on a team like this season's edition of the Arizona Coyotes. So we're going to move on from the Coyotes. I think, you know what, actually, before we do so, we're going to maybe try something new this year, Horwat. What is your prediction for this game?
Oh, man.
And by new, I mean maybe potentially keeping track of these predictions. So what is your prediction, Penguins Coyotes opening night tonight?
I'm going to go with a good old 5-1 victory.
5-1 victory. You're predicting a blowout on opening night, and honestly, I see the same thing. I don't know if I see 5-1. I think it'll be a 7-2 game.
I thought you didn't see that blowout, and then you just added on another goal or a few extra goals.
I was trying to talk myself out of it, but we did just see that lineup. Like, we talked about it, we saw it.
And we didn't look at the defense because you said it was that bad.
It's bad. Like, Shane Gostisbehere is the name on that defense.
Oh, man.
So, it's not good. Karel Vejmelka is going to need to stand on his head, but I see the same thing as last year. Eventually, the cream rises to the top, and the Penguins get a big boost early on from their home crowd at the continuation of the Crosby, Malkin, and Letang era. But let's move over and talk a little bit about the Tampa Bay Lightning game on Saturday night. Obviously, that might be the only reason the Penguins don't blow out the Coyotes tonight. Big look-ahead spot. You're taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning, the 3-time back-to-back-to-back Eastern Conference champion of, the NHL. So looking at that game, Tampa Bay obviously lost to the Rangers on opening night 3-1, but Andrei Vasilevskiy still looked like peak Andrei Vasilevskiy. 36 saves on 39 shots. Steven Stamkos with a laser power play goal for the lone tally. They didn't look bad. I will say the Rangers did look better, and we'll talk about them as their games grow nearer. But last season, the Penguins won the season series 2-1, blowouts all around, a 6-2 Pens victory, a 5-1 Tampa Bay Lightning victory, and then the season ended with a 5-1 Pittsburgh Penguins win. So what do you think about this matchup really quickly before we head over to our Stanley Cup predictions after a quick break?
Which matchup? The Lightning Rangers?
The Lightning Penguins.
Oh, Lightning Penguins, yes. They're a difficult team. They always are. Obviously, we discussed the 3-time defending and still Eastern Conference champions. They are a difficult team despite losing pieces. They somehow still have the main great group of guys in Steven Stamkos, Nikita Kucherov, Braden Point, Corey Perry's still there being a pest. Pat Maroon is still there being overrated. And then obviously that's just the front end. Victor Hedman on the back and Mikhail Sergachev again on the back end. Is he still on their third line?
I believe he's still on their third defense. He might have bumped up because they lost a lot of defensemen this offseason. I mean, McDonough is gone. I believe who's injured? Somebody's injured down there too. They lost Jan Ruda, obviously. Yep. And then I believe it is Bogosian is injured to start the season. So they're missing 3 defensemen from last year.
Just stupid that a player of that skill set is on their third line of defense. And then obviously Vasilevskiy and that needs no introduction. So they're a difficult team for sure. It's interesting. It's fun that the Rangers, that's not fun. The Rangers beat them out, but they are human. and things can be faltered with them. I don't think they get back to the same heights that they have this year. I think this is finally not the end of the road, but their step back. And the Penguins will have to take full advantage of that every chance they get this year, and it starts on Saturday.
Yeah, it's definitely a matchup that is must watch. I will not be watching the matchup, unfortunately, but I will be having a lot of fun on Saturday night. Not watching the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Pittsburgh Penguins, but rest assured I will rewatch it. That way we can talk about it on Monday's episode of the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. But when you look at this matchup, I think it also helps that the Pittsburgh Penguins, after Thursday night, are off until that game. Meanwhile, the Tampa Bay Lightning will play the Columbus Blue Jackets on Friday in the city of the fifth line. But we're going to take a quick break. Again, I keep forgetting this. Any predictions for Tampa Bay Pittsburgh?
Another prediction. That one's harder. That one's harder because we don't know what this first game has looked like yet.
Yes.
If I'm gonna I'll just keep it close and say 3-2, and let's go 2-0. Let's take advantage of the Lightning. 3-2 victory for the Penguins, and we just kind of have to keep it close.
I think the fact that this game is played at PPG Paints Arena is a big help to the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think if anybody watched The Longest Yard, this is a tune-up game for the Pittsburgh Penguins against the Arizona Coyotes before they take on the real competition of the Tampa Bay Lightning. This is going to look really bad if they lose to the Yotes tonight, but tune-up game. Kick the living shit out of them, if anybody's seen The Longest Yard. But I'm going to go with a 2-0 victory on Saturday night. First shutout of the season for Tristan Jarry. I know that's out on a ledge because everybody loves the offense of the Tampa Bay Lightning, but 2-0. That's what I'm going with. But we're going to take a quick break. When we return, really quickly, our Stanley Cup predictions and teams to watch around the league. Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast. We're running a little long today. We hope everybody has stuck with us to this point, but it is opening day PPG for the Pittsburgh Penguins, obviously. We're very excited. We have a lot to talk about, and I completely forgot about this, Horwat. We were on Locked On Penguins with Hunter Hodes. Go check that out. It was Tuesday's episode. The two of us went and joined Hunter, and he asked us a question at the very end. And for some reason, it caught me entirely off guard. And that was, who are our Stanley Cup predictions? It's that time of year, and we give out a Stanley Cup prediction every single season. But for some reason this year, I just did not think about it in the slightest. But I'm rather okay with the matchup that I picked there off my back foot. So I'm going to, set my feet, and I'm still going to throw the ball downfield to these two teams. I'm going to go with, in the West, the Minnesota Wild, because Kirill Kaprizov is a bona fide star. Like, he is. Now, despite what Brian Boucher had to say on opening night on ESPN, Kirill Kaprizov is a star, and in my opinion, he's a bigger star than anybody that plays for the LA Kings. But you have him. You have some young guns there that are going to make a difference this year. Marco Rossi, Kalen Addison, Matthew Boldy, who I didn't mention on Tuesday's episode. And you have a guy in Marc-Andre Fleury that has shown the capability to run the gauntlet. He is a Vezina Trophy winner not too long ago. He is a 3-time Stanley Cup champion, despite only playing in the clinching game in one of them. And he's taken another team to the Stanley Cup in the Vegas Golden Knights, not to mention the first time he went with the Penguins back in 2008. So good goaltending. Really physical team defense by the Minnesota Wild as well. I think Dean Evison does a fantastic job there as a coach. I like Billy Guerin as a GM, and I just like their positioning in the West heading into this season. So I have the Wild, and in the East, it's tough. We both said it on Tuesday. It is tough to pick a winner out of the East. It is basically impossible. But I ended up going with the New York Rangers. It looks good after Tuesday night. I will say that. It looks like a good prediction after Tuesday night. Goaltending and special teams always very important. The Rangers have that in spades. One more year of growth from the kid line and Kakko, Lafreniere, and Hedl. I think that's going to be vastly important. And I do think they'll be better this season than they were last at 5-on-5. Not that Vinny Trocheck's all that great of an addition, but I do think the team as a whole will improve at 5-on-5. So I have Rangers versus Wild, and I'm giving it to the guys from the snowy north of the United States. The Minnesota Wild win their first Stanley Cup in franchise history this season.
Quite a bold take. Quite a Matthew Boldy take, actually. I did it, guys. Yeah, when it came to my predictions too, I really was not prepared at all for that kind of question. I'm still really not, to be fair. I'm just looking at. I just have the list of all 32 teams in front of me, and
Well,
and we know we can knock names off that definitely won't make it, i.e., everyone
Arizona.
we discussed before: Arizona, Philadelphia, other teams that are just into the nonsense. Chicago's down there. But it's hard to pick out one team from each conference that can make the right noise. I remember on the recording, I chose Calgary out of the West, and then I just straight up did not choose an East team because who's got the ability to make it? We talk Toronto as being a popular pick. Well, can they get out of the first round first? You don't want to make that pick just because they're so uncertain. You don't want to pick the Penguins just because we don't want to look like homers.
Really. I mean, listen,
it's a decent pick though.
People will say we're homers, but I try not to have any homers. And I hope people that listen to this understand that, and I hope it comes across like that. And I feel like you do the same thing. Pick the Penguins if that's who you believe. Who cares what other people think? If that is truly what you believe, pick the Pittsburgh Penguins. If it's not truly what you believe and you're just hoping for it, then don't do it because then you're a homer.
Well, that might be the point of me. But looking at some of the other teams, you think Florida, well, what can they actually do in the postseason? They have a weird new system, a new lineup. Carolina, again, can they do it, though? The Rangers, I mean, as much as you say they looked good, that's game one, but can they still do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because on with Hunter, I just straight up did not pick an East team.
I missed that. I thought you did.
No, I don't think we ever came back to me. I don't think I ever actually fully answered one, but just because it's fun, it's the fun answer, and you know what? I will be the homer. Why not knock in the Penguins? I think Calgary and Pittsburgh was my postseason prediction last year, so we'll just roll with it.
Ride the train, Horwat. Ride the train. And now we can all safely say, and this is a public service announcement and also a comment that goes directly out to Hunter Hodes as well. Noted question ducker Nick Horwat.
Absolutely. When it comes to picking a team out of the East right now, yeah, absolutely.
Now, Horwat, I'm not going to let you duck the last question, but who wins that matchup between the Flames and the Penguins? I know Radim Zahorna might play a big role for Calgary, but who wins that matchup?
You know what? Pittsburgh. There's number 6.
Number 6 and number 4 for Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Christopher Letang. But before we go away, I do want to mention a couple other teams to watch. In my opinion, I think the Seattle Kraken are going to be a fun team. That's an ESPN Plus team for sure to keep an eye on. Matty Beniers, Shane Wright, both going to be electrifying centers for the Kraken this year. And they have a lot of fun forwards. It's weird. You know, if you want to go back and watch Turbo, if you want to go watch Jared McCann, they have Oliver Bjorkstrand that they added this summer. So it's a lot of fun out there in Seattle. Another expansion team, I like the Vegas Golden Knights. They got a win on day one. Jack Eichel's first full season in a long time. I love Logan Thompson, Horwat. I do. He's not a Vezina guy, but you know what? He's going to be just good enough for the gold cloaks of the Vegas Golden Knights. And Bruce Cassidy's also a good coach, you know, underrated move there, getting him instead of Pete DeBoer. And also, really quickly, the New Jersey Devils, I'm going to watch them because I expected them to be fun this year. Other people are very high on the New Jersey Devils. Dom Luszczyszyn has them at number 2 in his preseason rankings or projections, I should say, for the 2022-23 season. That's a lot. You know, I thought maybe they can squeak in as a playoff team, take that next step, but a lot of people very high on the Devils. Horwat, any other teams that you're going to keep an eye on really quickly before we close out the show?
Yeah, I'll keep mine quick. I'll just lead everyone to listen to Hunter's podcast that we were on to my thoughts on Ottawa. I think they just can be a lot of fun. But I also want to throw in Columbus. People are still really low on Columbus. I don't think they're still that great of a team, but I love the addition of Johnny Gaudreau to that team because you can't stay the path or get worse when you add that many points, assuming he has even an inkling of last season. I love that addition. For that addition alone, I bumped them really high on my projected rankings. So,
your projected rankings or your power rankings?
Both. I bumped them pretty high just for Johnny Gaudreau alone.
Okay.
They're going to be a fun team, and something to keep an eye on. It sucks saying that, but they're a team that I'm definitely going to be watching on top of Ottawa as well.
The Columbus Blue Jackets, and let me say it again, the fifth line. That is
No one
that is
knows what that
it's-
means. We are far past that.
Hey, that is an inside joke. It is a secret for the Tip of the Iceberg podcast that you can just ask us and we'll tell you. But that's going to do it for this episode. We hope everybody that's going to the game tonight has a genuinely great time. I know I'm expecting to have a great time. If anybody is a listener of the show and wants to come buy me a beer at Milano's beforehand, that's where I'm going to be drinking before the game. Horwat has some work to do, so he won't be able to be intoxicated, but I'll be there. And nonetheless, we hope everybody has a great season. Game 1 of 82 tonight. We'll be back on Monday discussing games 1 and 2 of 82. Of course, they take on the Tampa Bay Lightning. We hope everybody enjoyed this little bit longer edition of the Tip of the Iceberg podcast. We'll be back on Monday. Have a great week, Penguins fans. Have a great weekend, Penguins fans. And very, very welcome to the NHL and Pittsburgh Penguins regular season. See you guys.